Hi, I'm Skip Nipper. Welcome to my podcast, where I tell you about not only Nashville's great baseball history and traditions,
shot to right, a one-hop liner,
but certainly about its past. And you will hear a little bit about its present and future, too.
Yes, he can. It makes the waist-high catch.
There are great stories about Tom Wilson Park, Herschel Greer Stadium, Sulphur Dell, and the players, coaches, and fans who love everything about baseball. And every once in a while, you will get to hear from a special guest who will share their fondness and even passion for the great game.
The high fly ball down the right field corner, going way back, hits a lead-off home run.
Raymond Johnson spent many years in the sports department at the Nashville Tennessean, the local morning newspaper here in town. And I remember poring over his columns, Fred Russell's and George Leonard's too, among others, when I was young. And now I relive those articles and columns with envy for each one's writing style and dedication to all sports, but especially baseball. Now, Raymond Johnson joined the Tennessean as a copy boy in 1918 and retired as sports editor in 1970. During that period, he built a monumental career as a sports writer and a sports editor. A native of Humphreys County and a Hume-Fogg High School graduate, Johnson had a significant impact on sports in Tennessee and even around the nation. And upon his passing in 1991, glowing testimonies were served up, especially this one. Through his sports reporting, the Tennessean gained a national reputation for its coverage of sports. Now, those words were from Tennessean publisher John Siegenthaler, and they sum up the proud legacy Raymond Johnson left during his illustrious career. I'm a member of the Nashville Old Timers Baseball Association, and I'm connected to the organization's history through Johnson and the early days of Old Timers, and let me tell you why. In 1938, Harry Warhorse Rogers, an amateur coach, really a promoter, if you will, in the area, presented an idea to Raymond Johnson to publicize a hot stove event where players and fans could discuss baseball during the winter. And Johnson took the idea to the public in his reporting and in his columns, and a gathering was announced as a meeting for December 1, 1938, at Shacklett's Restaurant, and it marked the inaugural meeting of the Nashville Old Timers Baseball Association. Rogers was elected president, and he held the office until he died in 1951. And who would you guess took his place? Well, Johnson became president of Old Timers, and he began the practice of having a well-known baseball figure as a guest speaker at each banquet. And Nashville manager Hugh Poland and former major leaguer Hub Perdue were first. Johnson stayed in office through 1956, but set the organization in motion to have top-name baseball figures as the primary guests at the banquet. And each have been special throughout our last banquet in January of 2025 when we had one of Nashville's great ball players, Don Mattingly. Now, Johnson would often revisit the past in his one man's opinion sports columns. And although he loved all sports, from football to horse racing, and from basketball to softball, I particularly enjoy reading what he writes about baseball. And I found his column that was published on January 1, 1950, the first of the new year, to be one where he is waxing reminiscent, as he begins with these words: "Let's turn the calendar back a half century and take a peep at some of the happenings that have taken place in sports locally in the last 50 years. Now, Johnson could not possibly have been around for some of those events, but he explains how he knows about them. When he writes, "It has been my pleasure to have seen many of the events which have made history, and to have known many of the characters, But in order to give you facts in the early part of the century, it was necessary to dig into the musty files. So he begins by expounding on the great Vanderbilt football coach, Dan McGugan, and rightfully so. But then he writes about baseball, starting with legendary Nashville Vols manager Larry Gilbert. And once again, he writes, the next name that strikes me would be Larry Gilbert. The grand old man of the Southern Association was lured here from New Orleans in 1939 by the late Fay Murray. Fay Murray was the owner of the Nashville Vols Ball Club. And in 10 years as manager, Larry gave Nashville 4 pennants and 3 Dixie Series titles. And then as general manager last year, remember this is 1950, he obtained the players that enabled Raleigh Hemsley to guide those Vols to another pennant, the playoff crown, and the Dixie Series diadem. And I'll say, yes, 1949 was another great year in Nashville Vols baseball history. Johnson goes on and asks his readers, who'd be next to pop into your mind? Before he lists these. Vetter Sitton, star of Nashville's 1-0 win over New Orleans in 1908 to capture the Southern Association pennant. Hugh Hill, who hit .416 while dividing his time between pitching and playing the outfield for Nashville in 1901. Doc Wiseman, who famously roamed the right field dump at Athletic Park before it became known as Sulphur Dell for 12 seasons. Boots Poffenberger, who won 29 games, including the playoffs, for Nashville in 1940. Hub Perdue, who pitched in his stocking feet in 1907 and managed Nashville in 1921. Les Fleming, who hit .414 in 1941, even while having a broken wrist. Newt Fisher, owner of Nashville's team in the inaugural Southern Association season in 1901, and continued to manage into 1903 and 4. Tommy Tatum, who hit 3 home runs over Sulphur Dell's left field fence in a single game on June the 1st, 1941. Dick Wade, who hit 4 consecutive homers in 1928. Jim Poole, who hit 50 home runs in 1930. Bill Schwartz, who managed Nashville and then Vanderbilt when he left professional baseball. Hazen Kyler, center fielder of one of the most fantastic outfield combinations for Nashville in 1923 between Lance Richburg in right and Bevo Leborvo in left. The Johnnards, twin pitcher and catching battery of the Vols, Claude and Clarence. Charlie Workman, who slugged 52 home runs in 1948. Now, Johnson goes on to mention 14 more Nashville pros, too, before turning back to football, basketball, golf, tennis, professional boxing, and golden gloves, wrestling, horse racing, and all the stars in his mind. He turns to great games and events, too, before closing out his story with this, and I'm quoting, I'm merely listing some I think will remain in the hearts of spectators for many years, and I hope the old-timers will relive some of theirs as the above names brings back memories of long ago. My admiration for Johnson does not end there because he was also a visionary. Let me give you this one instance with many parts to it from an article he wrote in his One Man's Opinion sports column published over 85 years ago on January the 29th, 1950, not quite a month after he published his January 1 article that he reminisced. And see if you agree that he was a visionary. Because here's what he wrote, and I believe you'll be astounded, as I was. Remember, this was published in 1950. So opening quote is, what will sports be like in 2000 AD? Will television screens replace the stadia for the spectators? Will baseball do away with its most colorful figure, the umpire? Will colleges have professional football teams with their players compelled to attend classes? Will we have huge double-decked stadia with roofs over the playing field that can be opened by pushing a button and which will be heated for cold weather and air cooled for summer. The electrical eye probably will be calling balls and strikes in the not too distant future. But I don't believe the umpire will ever join the dodo bird, although I have seen some that should. The ump is as much a part of the game as is a baseball. It would be difficult for a pitcher or manager to charge up to the plate and start arguing with an electrical eye that the call on a pitch was wrong. Now, Johnson spends another paragraph writing about changes to football, but he circles back to baseball in his column. Fiberglass bats are another possibility for baseball. And this one, he nearly nails it on the head, just missing it by a couple when he says Babe Ruth's home run record of 60 will be wiped out with some gent hitting 75 in a season and several others beating the current mark. Can you say Roger Maris, Aaron Judge, and Barry Bonds? Johnson is doing some great thinking, where he asked his readers to look back 50 years in his January 1 column. In this one, later in the month, he's asking them to look forward. And he closes with this. All the above sounds like Johnson's wildest dream, but a lot of it probably will come true. I hope you are around to see it. Well, agree with change or not, according to Raymond Johnson, change is inevitable, even in the timeless sports we have grown to love. I'm glad he brought attention to them over 85 years ago, because changes are here to stay and new ones are on the horizon. Johnson died on August the 10th, 1991, at the age of 87, and was buried in Nashville's Woodlawn Memorial Park. In 1973, Johnson was inducted into the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame and selected to the Tennessee Sports Writers Hall of Fame in 2007. I wish I could speak to Raymond Johnson to hear what he would think about today's sports, how some of the things that he predicted actually came true. And I'd like to tell him his wild dreams are not so wild these days. Well, thanks as always for listening in. I hope you enjoyed Nashville's Baseball History Podcast. I'm Skip Nipper. I hope you'll come again. And thanks for listening.